1995, Jerome Jerry Jacobson, a former cop turned security expert, made a decision that would set in motion one of the most daring fraud schemes in American history. As head of security for the company that ran McDonald's monopoly promotion, it was Jacobson's job to safeguard millions in prizes. But over the next decade, he would organize a scheme that was, to put it bluntly, very ballsy, and would end up defrauding McDonald's out of $24 million and involve a mobster, a Mormon real estate developer, and dozens of others. Welcome to the Beach House 34 True Crime and Paranormal Podcast. I'm your host, Christine Worth, and this is part 1 of 2 on the McDonald's monopoly fraud case. Today, we're diving into a story that might have slipped past your radar, the McDonald's monopoly fraud of 2001. And don't worry if you're drawing a blank. There's a good reason that this case might not ring any bells. It was early September 2001, and a major corporate fraud case was about to unfold in the courts. Now, normally, this would have been front page news. But here's the thing. The trial began on September 10th. 2001. Yep, just one day before 9/11. As you can guess, when the attacks happened, everything else took a back seat. But let me tell you, this wasn't your average scam. We're talking about one of the biggest corporate fraud cases ever seen in this country. And here's how it all began. First, I want to introduce you to Jerome Jerry Jacobson, the man at the center of this whole story. Jerry began his career as a police officer in Hollywood, Florida, and he was there for about a year until an injury coupled with a diagnosis of, and excuse me here, Guillain-Barré syndrome. And this is a rare neurological condition where the body's immune system mistakenly attacks part of the peripheral nervous system. So this forced Jerry to hang up his badge. Jerry and his then wife, Marcia, packed up and moved to Atlanta. Jerry gets hired to do private security. But here's where things get interesting. He was hired by Dittler Brothers, a printing firm. His then wife, Marcia, already worked there as a security auditor and helped him get the job. But Dittler Brothers isn't just your average printing company. They actually handle some pretty confidential materials like U.S. postage stamps and lottery tickets, the kinds of materials that you wouldn't want to fall in the wrong hands. One of their big clients, if not the biggest client, was a company called Simon Marketing. Now, you may never even heard of the company, but they were the same company that came up with the idea for the McDonald's Happy Meal that had become obviously super successful. And they were also the ones who came up with the idea of the McDonald's Monopoly game that made its first appearance in 1987. Simon Marketing needed a printer, though, to make these game pieces for McDonald's. And so they turned to their printing company, Dittler Brothers, to print the pieces. Now, at the time, Jerry Jacobson was the one who oversaw the production of these pieces at Dittler. After about a year, and discovering that Jerry was this model employee who was overseeing the McDonald's game pieces at Dittler, Simon Marketing made him an offer and hired Jerry away from Dittler, where Jerry became the director of security at Simon Marketing. His job was to safeguard the integrity of the McDonald's Monopoly game pieces. He oversaw the entire production process, all the way from their creation to their distribution. Now, if you're not familiar, the way that the McDonald's Monopoly game worked is like this. When you, as the customer, would head to McDonald's and buy certain menu items, you get game pieces. They're attached to the container of the item that you bought. Now, each container usually had 2 of these pieces on it, and you would then peel them off, hoping to find one of many, many prizes. Some of these peel off stickers were instant win pieces where you could win free McDonald's food like small fries or a McFlurry. Nothing really fancy, but still, a win's a win, right? Some of these had instant win prizes for cash, anywhere from $5 to $100, or gift cards from various retailers. Other pieces were Monopoly game pieces, where you try to collect a full set of properties, just like you would if you were playing the board game. If you got all the pieces in a set, you could win some big ticket prizes, even large amounts of cash. As you might imagine, most of these pieces, they were pretty common, and it was normal to peel off a Monopoly piece that you already had 10 of. But there would be that one piece that would be incredibly rare. In the United States, it was Park Place and Boardwalk, which could win you $1 million. These $1 million game pieces, though, they were very hard to come by, if not impossible. The odds of getting them both were astronomical, 1 in 250 million. The game, though, was such a big hit that it increased McDonald's sales by an impressive 40%. Jerry Jacobson had a huge responsibility. He monitored the printing presses at Dittler Brothers and was ensured the proper application of the instant winner stamps and the implementation of security features like random watermarks to prevent counterfeiting. He would secure the high-value pieces in a vault that had coded keypads and combination locks, and he would personally take the valuable pieces and place them in envelopes secured with tamper-proof metallic seals. He would then transport the winning game pieces to McDonald's packaging plants across the country. He did this himself. He even wore a specially designed vest to conceal the game pieces during transport, and as an added security measure, his movements were monitored at all times by an independent auditor to ensure the security of the process. When Jerry would arrive at one of the packaging plants, he would oversee the placement of the winning game pieces on McDonald's food packaging, ensuring that they were randomly distributed. After doing this process for over a year, Jerry had a thought. He wanted to see if he could get away with stealing a winning piece without anyone noticing. So he swiped a $25,000 game piece, and while he was at a family gathering in Miami, gave it to his stepbrother. Now, he didn't think this would raise any red flags because his stepbrother had a different last name than he did. Jerry would later say, "I don't know if I just wanted to show him I could do something or bragging, but I just needed to see if I could do it." When Jerry's local butcher found out that Jerry was in charge of the prizes for the game, he told Jerry one day that, hey, he'd like to win a prize himself. Jerry was more than happy to tell him that, sure, he could do it, but it would look suspicious because they were connected. The butcher then offered to have a friend who lived quite a ways away claim a $10,000 prize. And then what he did is he gave Jerry $2,000 for the stolen ticket. Now, around this same time, McDonald's was also facing another problem: employee theft. In one case, a 17-year-old in Wisconsin was arrested for stealing $3,000 in game pieces. And honestly, you have to wonder why this didn't happen more often. Or, maybe it did. But here you have McDonald's employees getting paid minimum wage. From 1981 to 2007, the average federal minimum wage was $4.29 per hour. Yet here they were, for the most part, in charge of handing out these Monopoly game pieces to customers, some which may have been worth more than their average yearly salary. It would have been very tempting, to say the least. Because of this, McDonald's changed the way that they distributed the game pieces. So instead of attaching them to food packaging during production, they began to hand out game pieces from a secure roll at the counter. Because of this change, no longer going on the packaging, Jerry no longer had access to the winning game pieces. And as a result, he was removed from his role in distributing or seeding game pieces into the supply chain for many years. But in 1995, McDonald's decided to scale up their monopoly promotion, and they went back to the previous method of attaching game pieces for food to food packaging during production. Now, Jerry was now back in charge of overseeing the distribution of the winning game pieces. Jerry was back where he wanted to be, and things moved along just like they had before. But then something happened that had Jerry rethinking everything about the whole system itself. That year, Simon marketing executives had to run a random computerized program to decide which factory location would now distribute the game pieces. When the program came back to a factory in Canada, Simon Marketing reran the program until it was in a location within the United States. This meant that no one in Canada would have the opportunity to win the valuable prizes like the $1 million or the Dodge Viper. This seemed to mark a turning point in Jerry. He would later say, I knew what we were doing in Canada was wrong. Sooner or later, somebody was going to be asking questions about why there were no winners in Canada. He realized that even the top executives weren't on the up and up, and the game was, in fact, rigged. With Jerry still reeling about what he had just witnessed, he felt that since the game was already rigged, why not continue with what he'd been doing previously? Sometime after this, Jerry had accidentally received a package from a supplier, and he opened it. Inside this package were the tamper-proof seals that were identical to those that were used on the envelopes that contained the winning pieces. With the product that he needed in his hand, Jerry began to form a plan of his own. After all, here he was earning $70,000 a year and responsible for tens of millions of dollars in prizes, which he was in charge of, all the while earning this pretty modest salary. And he found himself in this personal struggle. He had always done the right thing, well, except for the $25,000 game piece and the butcher, right? And made sure that the winning pieces did get to where they needed to go. But seeing his own company rerunning a program to make sure that the U.S. got to distribute all of the big prizes changed something in Jerry. On one of the trips to distribute the winning game pieces, he excused himself to the bathroom. Now, remember, he had to travel with someone. He was traveling with an auditor, but this one at the time happened to be female and knew that she would not follow him into the men's room. He then goes into a stall. He takes the seal off of the envelope he was carrying and removed the winning game pieces. He then replaced those with commons game pieces, the game pieces that everyone always seemed to get, and then resealed the envelope. The first piece that he stole was a $1 million instant win game piece. He took this and locked it into a safety deposit box. Next, he stole the documents that proved that Simon Marketing had rigged the system so that none of the winning pieces would go to Canada. He would later say, I thought I would need that to protect myself. If Simon Marketing ever fired him, he essentially had a get out of jail free card. Then Jerry stole another $1 million instant win game piece. But instead of keeping it for himself, he sent it off to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Tennessee. It was sent anonymously, and no one ever knew who mailed it. No one knew why he did this. Maybe he really wanted it to go to those in need. Maybe this was an act of generosity that would make him look better in the event that he was ever caught. Who knows? What we do know is that, again, his butcher approached him, but this time with a different kind of plan. He would get a family member to find the game piece, and to be sure that it all went well, he would go with his family member. So Jerry gave him a $200,000 winning game piece with the agreement that his kickback after he claimed his winnings would be $45,000. That never happened. To rub salt in the wound, one day he saw his butcher and a friend on a McDonald's commercial happily claiming their $200,000. Then came a chance meeting at the Atlanta airport in November of 1995. As Jacobson sat there waiting for his flight, so Jerry's sitting there waiting, this guy named Gennaro, also nicknamed Jerry, Colombo, 32 years old, sat next to him. So Jerry Jacobson struck up a conversation and asked where he was going. Colombo then unzipped his huge bag, showing Jacobson a massive amount of $100 bills. He then said that he was heading to Atlantic City. This set off a conversation between the two of them, where Jerry learned that Colombo was born in Sicily, he was raised in New York, and that he moved to South Carolina. There, he had several businesses, including adult nightclubs, casinos of his own that he operated underground, along with a sports betting ring. And he also told Jacobson that he was a member of the Colombo crime family in New York. Now, this couldn't have been a chance meeting. No self-proclaimed mobster is going to randomly sit next to you at an airport, show you a bunch of money, and then tell you who he is and give you his life story. But Jerry Jacobson then began to reveal that he worked in promotional gaming, and Colombo told Jerry that he liked to find new ways to cheat the system, and then told Jerry about this county in Georgia that had passed a new law that would only allow strip clubs in certain locations. Colombo then opened up a church, quote unquote, of sorts, named literally, seriously, the Church of Fuzzy Bunnies. And he wanted the girls who worked there to first read the Bible and then go to work. So I guess this is how he got around this new law. Their relationship continued on after that Atlanta meeting, and it continued on so much so that in November of 1995, Jerry had secretly given Colombo a game piece for a brand new Dodge Viper. Now, Colombo even agreed to be in a McDonald's commercial, showing that he won this car. Instead of the car, though, Colombo instead took the money. Now, with Colombo's new partnership with Jerry, he then reached out to friends and family to involve them in the scheme. Each winner would receive a portion of the prize money they were given. The rest was funneled as a cutback to Jacobson through Colombo. And this Jacobson/Colombo partnership marked a big turning point in the scam. What had started as a one-man operation was now a sophisticated network capable of distributing millions of dollars in fraudulent prizes. During this time, Colombo and a woman named Robin began to date. After just 2 weeks, Colombo asked Robin to marry him. And it wasn't long after this engagement that Colombo introduced Jerry to Robin and introduced him as Uncle Jerry. In 1996, Robin's father, who lived in Florida, received a stolen $1 million winning ticket. Robin's brother-in-law, who lived in Virginia, would also receive a $1 million ticket. Now, everyone who received a winning ticket was required to send a kickback to Colombo and Jacobson. Now, by this time, Robin and Colombo, they had gotten married, they had a child, so this whole scheme has been going on for some time. What Robin was initially enamored with when it came to Colombo, with the lifestyle, the money, the protection, and so forth, soon became very frustrating to her, as her husband would spend all of his free time in adult clubs and casinos. So she began to call and confide in Jerry, telling him about the fact that Colombo was gone all of the time, that he'd been sleeping with her own personal trainer, and that she was very upset about all of it. This fraud network continued until 1998 when Colombo died in a car accident, one in which his wife, Robin, was driving and their child was in the car. Now, if you think it's a little suspicious, you definitely aren't the only one. After he died, Robin would say that the rest of the family cut her off, saying they were the type of people who didn't like outsiders. The problem now was that Columbo was gone, so Jerry had to find someone else to work on the scheme with him. So Jerry, while he's on vacation on a cruise ship, he meets a guy named Don Hart. Now, Don used to own a trucking company in Georgia. They bonded on this trip, and when Jerry told him about the scheme, Don was all in. Don later brought in two other men, Richard Courtier and Andrew Glom. Now, Richard owned a chain of fried chicken restaurants, and it is said that he believed that he was helping McDonald's find the real winners because most people just tossed their game pieces into the garbage. He said every time they ran the game and had winners, the sales were up 38%. Now, Courtier would also recruit others, but these usually were just random people he met at parties. Really. Jerry had given Courtier around 10 winning pieces, which included several for cars and two $1 million prizes. The other man that Don recruited as part of the scheme, this Andrew Glom, he was a gambler and he had done prison time for transporting cocaine on a commercial flight. He said that he would give pieces away to people in dire need of money. And one of these people in dire need was a man who had been convicted of dealing 400 pounds of cocaine in 1999. Now, one of the last people recruited was Dwight Baker. Now, Dwight was a Mormon real estate developer who had come upon hard times after an accident had injured his back. Now, it's not known how Jacobson and Baker knew one another, but some say that Jacobson had purchased some property from Baker, with Baker being in real estate. So Dwight, this Mormon real estate developer facing financial difficulties, he was not someone that you would think would become involved in a scheme like this. But financial issues often make people do things they would never believe that they would do. Baker, along with his wife and their 5 children, had been collecting McDonald's Monopoly pieces in the hopes of winning enough to pay off tens of thousands in back taxes. So when Jerry approached Baker, it may have seemed like an answer to all of his problems. Baker would act as the middleman, finding people who were willing to pose as legitimate winners in exchange for a cut of the money. He targeted those who were facing financial hardship or who were just willing to participate in the scheme. He would coach them on how to come up with stories about how they found the winning tickets. One of the ways was claiming it was found in a hash brown bag, as directed by Jerry. He would help them create fake identities in other states so that they avoided suspicion and help them navigate the process to claim the prizes. Now, some of the things that Baker did were helping his foster son fill out a claim form after giving him a $1 million game piece. He also talked his sister-in-law into setting up a fake residence with an apartment, a phone number, a mailing address, a bank account, and a driver's license to make her $500,000 win appear totally legit. Finally, Baker would then facilitate the transfer of cash kickbacks from the winners to Jerry. Now, Baker at one time personally delivered $70,000 in cash to Jerry as a payment for the $1 million game piece. Then, in the year 2000, the FBI received an anonymous tip. The tip was almost too simple to be believed. The tipster said that 3 of the recent McDonald's Monopoly winners were somehow connected, and the odds of that happening were astronomical. The tipster also told the FBI that several of the recent Monopoly winners also knew a man who went by the name of Uncle Jerry. The informant also told about a group of quote unquote winners in Jacksonville, Florida, who had recently claimed large prizes. So, Special Agent Richard Dent started to investigate one of these winners, which was William Fisher, Robin's dad, who claimed a $1 million prize. And Fisher told McDonald's that he had won the prize in Litchfield, New Hampshire. But property records revealed that he lived in Jacksonville the entire time. The informant also claimed that members of a close-knit family in Jacksonville had claimed three $1 million prizes and a Dodge Viper. The tipster implied that this was statistically improbable and suggested that these wins weren't legitimate. So enter Special Agent Doug Matthews, a rookie FBI agent who worked in the Jacksonville, Florida field office in 2000. Now, initially, Special Agent Richard Dent was assigned to the case, but Matthews saw a note on Dent's desk that read, McDonald's Monopoly Fraud. And Matthews was described as young and eager and very out of the norm of an FBI agent. His methods, though, proved to be pretty invaluable. So Matthews is given the okay to kind of dig into this. And as his team and he began to dig, they uncovered a web of suspicious winners stretching up and down the East Coast. Now, the odds of winning the McDonald's Monopoly jackpot were 1 in 250 million. The odds of 3 connected people winning are virtually impossible. The FBI then assigned the case a name, Operation Final Answer. And that, my friends, is where we wrap up part 1. But this is just a small piece of this entire case. We've been introduced to the key players and we've learned how the scam worked. But this story is far from over. In part 2, you'll hear about the investigation, the way the FBI brought down the whole scheme, and what happened to all of the players. So be sure you tune in on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, where we wrap it all up. And until then, stay safe and we'll talk soon.